The clatter of plates and the hum of conversation abruptly stopped as Senator John Neely Kennedy stepped into the brightly lit diner, his leather jacket creaking softly with each step. The air seemed to thicken with tension, and every eye in the room turned toward him, some wide with curiosity, others narrowed with judgment. It was a quiet Tuesday evening in a small Louisiana town, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. But tonight, the familiar warmth of the diner sign glowing outside was overshadowed by an unexpected coldness. The waitress, a middle-aged woman named Clara with tired eyes and a forced smile, approached him hesitantly. "I'm sorry, Senator," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "but we can't serve you here tonight." The room held its breath as Kennedy, known for his sharp wit and Southern charm, stood motionless, his hands clasped in front of him, processing the sting of those words. Clara's refusal wasn't random. Rumors had swirled for weeks about Kennedy's recent vote on a controversial bill that many in the community felt betrayed their values. The diner, a local hub run by Clara and her husband Tom, had always been a neutral ground, a place where politics stayed at the door. But tonight, the pressure from regular customers had pushed Clara to take a stand. Tom, standing behind the counter with a furrowed brow, nodded in silent agreement, his hands gripping a coffee pot as if it were the only thing keeping him steady. Kennedy, a man who'd risen from humble roots in Zachary, Louisiana, to the U.S. Senate, felt the weight of their disapproval like a physical blow. He'd spent years advocating for his constituents, but this moment made him question if he'd lost touch with the very people he swore to serve. For a moment, the senator's mind flashed back to his childhood, days spent helping his father fix fences on their modest farm, learning the value of hard work and humility. Those memories fueled a resolve in him, and instead of turning away in anger or embarrassment, he did something unexpected. "Clara," he said softly, his voice carrying a warmth that cut through the silence. "I understand why you feel this way. Mind if I sit and listen for a spell?" The room buzzed with whispers as he pulled out a chair at an empty table, his posture open and unassuming. Clara hesitated, glancing at Tom, who gave a reluctant shrug. She nodded, and Kennedy sat, inviting her to join him with a gentle gesture. What followed was a raw, emotional exchange that no one in the diner could ignore. Clara poured out her frustrations, how the bill had threatened local jobs, how she feared for her son, a young mechanic struggling to make ends meet. Tom joined them, his gruff exterior softening as he shared stories of customers who'd stopped coming because of the political divide. Kennedy listened intently, his usual quips replaced by a rare vulnerability. He admitted his mistakes, explaining the complexities of the vote and how he'd fought to mitigate its impact, though he acknowledged he could have done more. Tears welled in Clara's eyes as she realized the man before her wasn't the caricature, painted by headlines, but someone wrestling with the same human struggles they faced. The turning point came when Kennedy reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn notebook, its pages filled with handwritten notes from town hall meetings. "I've been traveling the state hearing folks out," he said, sliding it across the table. "This is what you've told me, your worries, your hopes. I want to fix this, but I need your help." The gesture stunned Clara and Tom, who'd expected defiance or a political speech, not this humble plea for collaboration. The other patrons, drawn in by the exchange, began to gather closer, their initial hostility giving way to curiosity. One elderly man, a retired factory worker named Earl, spoke up. "You mean it, Senator? You're not just saying that?" Kennedy met his gaze steadily. "I mean it, Earl. Let's work together to make it right." Over the next hour, the diner transformed into an impromptu town hall. Ideas flowed, petitions to amend the bill, a grassroots campaign to support affected workers, and a promise from Kennedy to push for local relief funds. Clara, wiping her eyes, offered coffee to everyone, her earlier resolve to refuse service now a distant memory. Tom even cracked a smile, suggesting they host a community meeting right there in the diner. The mood shifted from tension to cautious hope, the clatter of plates resuming as people began to see Kennedy not as an adversary but as a partner. Yet the challenge wasn't over. The next day, news of the incident spread, sparking outrage among some of Kennedy's political allies who saw his actions as weakness. Social media lit up with debates, and pressure mounted for him to retract his promises or defend his original vote. Kennedy faced a sleepless night, torn between his political career and the trust he'd begun to rebuild. The next morning, he returned to the diner, this time with a plan. Standing on a makeshift stage of stacked crates, he addressed a crowd that had grown beyond the diner's walls, spilling into the parking lot. "I've heard you," he began, his voice steady despite the exhaustion in his eyes. "And I'm not here to ask for your votes. I'm here to ask for your guidance. We're starting a task force. Local folks, business owners, workers, to tackle this together." He unveiled a detailed proposal, backed by his office's resources, to lobby for amendments and support the community. The crowd erupted in applause, Clara and Tom among the first to cheer, their earlier conflict now a bridge to something greater. Weeks later, the task force's efforts bore fruit. The bill was revised, preserving jobs and allocating funds for training programs, a direct result of the diner's dialogue. Kennedy's reputation took a hit in some circles, but in that small town, he became a symbol of redemption. Clara and Tom invited him back for a celebratory meal, the diner sign glowing brighter than ever. As he sat with them, sharing stories and laughter, Kennedy reflected on the lesson etched into his heart. True leadership isn't about winning every battle, but about listening, learning, and lifting others up. The community, once divided, found unity in their shared struggle, and the senator, once refused service, left an inspiring legacy of humility and resilience. In the end, it wasn't just a victory for one man, it was a reminder that even in the face of rejection, compassion, and collaboration can heal the deepest wounds.